This is the Palisados Foundation. Palisados was created by a group of expat Jamaican IT professionals to provide equitable access to life opportunities for STEM students. Most specifically, we do this by promoting software engineering education internships for university students on the island. Each student works on one of our open source projects under the mentorship of an IT professional. Stipends are paid upon achieving predefined goals. This program is called the Calico Challenge. The IT sector is a dynamic, growing, and critical international industry that can provide significant financial growth and opportunity for our community. Our internship programs allow local IT professionals to globally compete. We started in 2016. Almost 40 students have completed the program. We have had a variety of current and past Jamaican sponsors, including the NCB Foundation, the JPS Foundation, the Grace Kennedy Foundation, the JMMB Group, Rail Decoy, Sutherland, Backyard Restaurant, Simtai Consulting, Vertis Technologies, the Jamaica Computer Society, and more. In this video, we'll be featuring the work done by students on the Pattoo project. Pattoo is a suite of software applications that gather and present time series data. In other words, data that changes over time. This could be computer system performance, stock market prices, or foreign exchange rates. Specialized software agents collect this data and send it to the central Pattoo server for storage. We also have guides on how to create agents for your specific needs. The data on the central server can be accessed easily using either the Pattoo mobile app or via the web. Let's take a look and see what the students did in 2020.
Okay, good night everyone. So my name is Dominic and I'm going to be presenting on what I did for the Pattoo project. So about me, so I'm a computer science major, final year major at the University of the West Indies. I am also into personal finance and investing, so I enjoy watching videos and investing and as well as reading books and investing, as well as my workflow is usually in the morning along with some very lo-fi music. So the journey. So Pattoo is a suite of repositories that have different requirements. So initially in May, we had plotted out various requirements that we would want to implement for the system. Later on, I started to develop on the back end, so the various business logic things that would happen on the back end. A lot of unit testing on the various things that I had finished in the back end, UI design, and the front end implementation of the UI design. So the graceful, so on the backend development, I worked on the graceful daemon. So what are daemons? Daemons are essentially just background processes, so things that they can't actually interact with, like say for instance, like Microsoft Word or such. So an example of a background process could be something like you set an alert and something on your OS would alert you at that given time that that you should do something. So that is a background process waiting for a given task to occur before it triggers. So it's running in the background waiting for something to happen. So many of the Pattoo features require daemons to operate. For example, the ability to retrieve data from agents or external data sources are done as a background process, or as well as running the server that hosts the actual data. So in the instance of a graceful daemon, so a graceful daemon are another class of daemons that allow for cleanup of resources before a given background process can be stopped. So the purpose of this mechanism is that it mitigates the possibility of data loss and data corruption. So let me give you an example. In the context of a bank in which they deal with a lot of data, right? So there is a lot of data coming in onto the server. So Imagine storing or retrieving large amounts of client data with a bank, which is used to make educated business decisions. And the process just ends while processing a large chunk of data. So, by using a graceful daemon, the possibility of corruption or unknowingly using incomplete data is mitigated. So in the context of Pattoo, when we're retrieving data from agents through the graceful ingester, which utilizes the graceful daemon, if a stop command or the database or the server happens to crash, the graceful ingester with the necessary cleanup steps that allows for data to not be corrupted or lost. So I also worked on user authentication. So when dealing with very confidential data, it is necessary to limit the access to a system. So this was achieved through a token-based authentication through JSON Web Tokens. So the token-based system doesn't allow for much server-side load in terms of storing session data. So each time a user wants to access a given resource, a token is sent to the server where it is verified on each request. So this approach was used due to time constraints, but it also allows for quick implementation. So it didn't allow for a lot of setup as such as other systems like LDAP. So later in the future, we'd like to reevaluate the system in terms of security, and I would like to work on that in the future. So, software testing. I did also software testing this summer as well, extensive software testing. So I also tested the graceful daemon. So I had to write update existing tests as well as create new tests for the graceful daemon. I also had to update existing the existing user function, the existing user system on Pattoo with user authentication. So I have to do some more updating of the testing there, as well as existing features that didn't have any existing tests. So this is the command line. This was the command line utilities that allow for you to interact with the Pattoo API in terms of showing data, updating data as such from the Linux terminal. So I did extensive testing on that feature. So user interface design. A new concept was needed. So reimagining a new design is always hard as a non-designer because I myself am not a designer per se. I really think I lack in that department. So on the existing Pattoo web, what was used was a CSS framework called Bootstrap. So initially, what Peter had prior was Bootstrap and some templating with Flask using the Ginger 2 templating engine, as well as some vanilla CSS and JavaScript. So we had to reevaluate this current design, and this was done through inspiration found on Dribble, which is a design platform that allows for you to see designs from other creators. So, and the tool that I used was known as Figma. So that was my design tool. So initially, I had used minimal colors, so gray tones mostly. So this is what I had initially done about mid-August. Thereafter, I did a final design in which I did some colorizing as well as accepted feedback from Peter in terms of what the user would want to see. So now it's colorized and now it just shows favorites. So this is just the design itself. So as well as this is the login, and this is the menu for creating a chart. So let me show you a short demo. So this is the login. So to note, this is a very minimal design where I just implemented what I had designed in terms of the UI. So, in terms of functionality, it only shows favorites, the favorites of a user. So that's my initial favorites chart. There's Dominic. So now I'm creating a chart that wouldn't pop up because it only shows favorites. So I'm putting in the chart title and data point ID, create. So it wouldn't show anything because it only shows favorites. Now I'm going to create a favorites chart. And then it produces a new favorites chart. So back to the presentation. Okay, so implementing design. This was done through local setup using Python. So Python was used for configuration of the setup in terms of the YAML file setup, in terms of what port to listen on for this given website. Then we decided to do a component-based design and development. So in doing that, we used React for component design and Tailwind CSS. So yes. So meditation, we need to, as developers, we need to be critical and straightforward of our performance. So one of my biggest issues was communication. I really lacked communication this summer. So this caused for many instances in which developers and other teams might be coding something that might introduce functionality that might interrupt my workflow. So if there was more communication and less friction in that sense, then cohesion we could have more cohesive development, as well as underestimating time limits, which is a big pain point for me, because initially you might think to yourself, oh, I can finish this task within a day, but no, it might take a week. So you need to be more cognizant of the fact that you need to more not underestimate time, but not overestimate time, but try to grasp what time something might take to develop, as well as brainstorming ideas for giving solutions. So many times I might think, oh, the solution is straightforward and I can finish it and such. So that ties into timing, but there are so many solutions that in some cases so many solutions that it's hard to pick what solution to use or utilize, as well as in other cases where there are so little solutions where it's hard to pick, where there are not many choices. All right, so closing remarks. So my future lies in software development and computer science, working on more innovative projects, both open source and commercial. With regards to Pattoo, there needs to be further improvements in terms of refactoring of Pattoo to allow for improved security, performance, and maintainability, and to comply with the various rigid standards of the development world. As well as I would like to further finish developing the Pattoo web for use later on. Thank you.
Thanks, Dominic. We have one question from Sheldon. He's asking the following question. Quite a large subset of failures are non-graceful. What is your data consistency and transaction completed strategy in those scenarios? Do you handle uncommitted writes, for example, server acknowledged receipt of data but hasn't put it on disk before the crash? This may be something that you're not familiar with, but please give it a shot.
So in terms of ingesting of data, So initially, what was developed before I worked on a project was the ability to cache data when it comes in from a Pattoo agent. So it would cache the data and then later on the Pattoo API would call for this data. So what we're trying to mitigate with the graceful ingester is that during that phase of ingesting what is in the cache, we don't want to corrupt that data. So before a stop command is given or or the server crashes, we would like for the graceful ingester to finish processing what it is doing before it shuts down. I'm not sure if that answers the question itself.
Well, all right. Picture this scenario, which is a common one. JPS have a brownout, server lose power, so there's nothing graceful. Can you recover? Or do you
Mm.
have a process to recover from that type of scenario? It's not someone stopping the process or stopping the daemon, but sudden power loss, right? Can you
Okay. Oh no,
clean up the
not
cache
currently.
and recover? Is that done yet, or is that future work?
Future work, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, so Sheldon, the database does have is also set up by default to do journaling. So in the event of a crash, we can recover from that. A feature that has been thought of is also to try and create some sort of a checksum on the data that is sent to try and
Right.
to also protect against that sort of thing. But that's not a feature yet, but that could be something that we could work on as a part of the integrity testing. So we have another question from Jeff. Did you discover specific things that you weren't taking into account in your initial estimates that you did by the end?
Uh, yes. So when I was doing the graceful daemon itself, I was having issues in terms of linking up with the actual daemon system that is used with Linux, which is System D. So initially, I had thought about doing it in a very brute force way where I used the very like a Python module to interact with the OS itself and shut it down via bash commands in a Python script. But that didn't work out as well, so I had to move towards something like using the dbus API, which allows for you to interface with various Linux Linux systems, so Linux systems like systemd, but that also didn't work as well. So at some point we just had to settle for things like if at this point we'll settle for a timeout. So if at this point the graceful ingester isn't finished ingesting whatever, so we had a timeout period in which you would wait before it shuts down or closes. So I have to settle for that solution. But in the future, I'd like to um, go over that again to make it more secure so that there's less data loss and such. So things like that, because something like that I thought I could have worked out in maybe a week or two, but it ended up spanning for an entire month because I'm trying to grapple with what solution should I use, and this solution doesn't work, or I have to go through many solutions before I settle on one.
He's asking.
Yes, at one,
So hold on.
yes.
Let's. So hold on a second. So we need to at least let people. For the recording, we're going to need to at least register what the question is. So if you could read the question first before answering, that'd be helpful.
Uh, so did you leverage your mentor to find that solution? Yes, I did. So initially, I thought I had found. So when talking with my mentor in one of my meetings, we had talked about a possible solution, and initially it seemed to have worked, but like over time, no, it wasn't a cemented solution that I could have used. So even with the help from a mentor as well as help from like other resources like Stack Overflow or the various Linux communities, I still couldn't find um a good solution to the problem initially. No problem.
Okay, any further questions?
I have a few comments if you'll indulge me for a minute.
Yeah, go ahead.
So between yesterday and today, I noticed a couple of things from everyone presenting. Yesterday I remarked on how I'm surprised Linux is not taught earlier in schools, but really that should be, if you make it in a generic sense, we should be teaching industry best practices and new technologies sooner in schools, which is something, if any of the professors on the call here, I think we have to take a closer look at how we introduce these things in curriculum and when we introduce them. The second thing I wanted to mention, just about everybody had either commentary or a slide on communication. So for this program, what did you guys use for a ticketing system or a software development framework or anything like that? Or if you didn't use one, are you considering one for next summer? Because I think it would be useful as part of their software engineering training to be familiar with, even if you prefer agile or waterfall or whatever, but some kind of system to track the work and make sure that everyone is aligned with what the deliverables are and so on and so forth.
Yeah, we had GitHub projects implemented, but unfortunately it wasn't
Okay.
adhered to strictly. And we've spoken to a number of students who have thought that that would have been a better approach. Almost all the work was managed using GitHub issues. So students would work on
Okay.
individual issues, but what happened is that in some cases, issues would have had multiple impacts. And the part of the issue was that for example, with the Pattoo set of projects, we were working with 4, 5, 6 different repos, and coordinating between the various repos was part of the issue, and we'll take note of that for next year.
Okay. Does this continue during the year or is this summer only?
We would like to see how anybody who's interested in continuing with it can continue working with it throughout the year. And we'll be soliciting assistance. That's probably starting tomorrow, to ask anybody who's willing to help us out with the Q4 goals to jump in and then work on it. So a number of students have mentioned the fact that we'd like to work on it afterwards, and we're looking for any other assistance that we can get as well. And like I said, both products, both the Pattoo and the Tower product that we saw yesterday, are very much MVP type products right now, and anybody who's willing to give it a try, we'd welcome their feedback as well. But of course, we need the manpower to help out with the development for that to happen.
Thank you for listening. If you are interested in participating, donating, or sponsoring our activities, then please visit our website at palisados.org. This is the Palisados Foundation.